That's great, Mary. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Menzies. I'm the Senior Education Officer in Education Scotland, leading on science, STEM, gender balance, amongst other things too. So it's really lovely to have you with us this afternoon. So I suppose the session this afternoon is really just a chance to share some of the thinking and some of the, the work that's been taking place in Forth Valley and West Lothian through our diversity pilot. And we've been running this in partnership with authorities, with schools and authorities, with colleagues in Skills Development Scotland. And what we're really keen to do is to extend this approach from the pilot to other schools across Scotland. So we're really keen to, to extend that invitation. And I suppose today is part sharing of what's been taking place so far, but also partly an invitation to other people to join and be a part of this work. So it's great to have you with us. Just to give you a bit of a background, in 2017, the STEM Education and Training Strategy was launched, and that had 4 key themes. One of the themes was around excellence. We had connection and inspiration, but a big part of that strategy was around equity and equality. And that's one of the reasons why we have Fiona and our Improving Gender Balance and Equalities team within Education Scotland. And really what we wanted to do with the STEM strategy was challenge the long-standing imbalances in STEM pathways that have been a feature of Scottish education for 35 years or more. And despite many of our efforts, that gender imbalance has hardly shifted, really. If you look at subjects, national qualification subjects like biology, dominated by girls, but also physics, computing, technologies dominated by boys. But there's also a big piece of work to be done around equity in terms of the extent to which care experienced young people are embarking in STEM pathways, or young people from our most deprived areas supported in those journeys. So for us, a big part of the strategy, to sum it up, is really about a STEM for all approach. And I think what our national data is telling us, we still have a way to go here to achieve that. And we know we have to sort of challenge traditions, cultures that have persisted for a long time. So today is really just that conversation about what we've tried, what we continue to try, and where we want to go, and perhaps how we can work in partnership with you to achieve that. And in the session today, we really hope to just engage in dialogue with you. There'll be some short inputs from some of the schools and others involved, but an opportunity for you to shape those discussions and to contribute as well. And I think all of this will be shaped, I suppose, through some of the wider agenda in terms of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, the stretch aims that local authorities have been asked to identify just now, and their ambitions to close the equity gap, because this is a big factor in this as well, and it's a big driver within the Scottish education. So we really want to frame it within the context of the Scottish Attainment Challenge. So to introduce you to some people today, we have Marjorie from Braes High School. Thanks for joining us, Marjorie. Karen from Larbert High School, and Callie from Falkirk Community Learning Development. We may also have our colleagues from Skills Development Scotland joining us, Craig and April. And in terms of education, Mary's introduced herself. Mary's the STEM officer for Falkirk. We've also got, Forth Valley West Lothian. We've also got Fiona from our gender balance team. We've got Julie from our CLD team. And we've got Trish and Kit, who are our team advisors within Education Scotland. So we're taking a really joined up approach within Education Scotland to this as well. So as we go forward today, feel free to pop your thoughts and questions into the chat. When we come to discussion sections, please switch on your camera. We're really keen to keep it informal today and to really have a strong dialogue with you. I'm really looking forward to that engagement. And I think, Mary, handing back over to you now.
Actually, you're handing over to Fiona for
Fiona.
Kick us off. Sorry, thanks, Ian. And Julie, if you're able to move on to the next slide for us, that would be great.
Thanks. So I think Ian's already sort of outlined the focus for today's session. We'll spend a bit of time doing that kind of context setting as to what we've done already. Kit's going to speak a little bit about how data and the Scottish Attainment Challenge might influence this and be sort of used in this context. And then, as Ian has mentioned, we're going to hear from a couple of settings on their examples. So, Julie, if you could move the slide on to the next one, please. Just to give a bit of background, over the course of the pandemic, Education Scotland, Skills Development Scotland, along with STEM leads from Falkirk and Clackmannanshire Council, we've worked together with a couple of schools as part of a pilot project to explore diversity in STEM. And the working group developed an agreed set of key messages to sort of demystify and essentially myth bust around STEM. and the reasons why people do or do not want to choose STEM when it comes to options choice within schools and also beyond schools as well. And there were 8 key messages that we felt as a group it was important to explore. Sorry, I'm just seeing someone is saying about not being able to see the slides. I can see the slides, so yeah, it might be an idea to come out and then come back in again. So I'm just going to sort of share those 8 key messages that we came up with as a group. The first one was thinking about STEM within the current and changing context. Thinking about who it is that influences choice of young people, so teachers, practitioners and parents being the key influencers. Also that STEM has a really strong role within curriculum development, consideration of where the STEM jobs are, and as we've said already, why are young people choosing or not choosing STEM? So thinking about how we might tackle gender stereotypes in STEM, identifying and removing any other barriers, so thinking about that intersection with other characteristics, and also thinking about the parity and availability of STEM pathways. So if you could pop onto the next slide, Julie, please. So the project working group then took these 8 key messages and we developed resources, some of which you can see on the previous screen and also on this screen. One set of resources was professional learning resources for staff that could either be worked through independently or together during collegiate time. We also wanted to create materials that could be lifted and adapted to use with parents who we know are significant influences when it comes to options and pathways. And lastly, a set of materials, again, that could be lifted and adapted to use with learners. And we'll hear a little bit more about this later on. Ian also mentioned at the start as well about the gender balance and how that hasn't really changed. So I know it's quite small on that slide, but the graph there just really highlights the STEM subjects since the 80s, really, and how hopefully you can sort of see the trend has been pretty flat. So in 35 years, we've not really managed to impact that gender balance in STEM subjects, despite lots of interventions, such as Girls Into events. So I think, you know, it's important to evaluate the effectiveness of these one-off events and instead consider what more do we have to do. And again, we hope to outline some starting points to consider later on. Okay, next slide, please, Julie. So, as with lots of things, COVID impacted the work, but several months on, we're kind of still holding on to lots of possibilities and opportunities, a few of which are shown on the screen. So learning that's coming through is around demystifying STEM. So, you know, trying to change that perception that it's for white middle class brainy males, that it's difficult and niche, and instead highlight the transferability of STEM skills to all sorts of areas of life and work, and really promote that idea that it's for everybody. Also around growing STEM pathways, so making connections with colleges and universities and employers to explore apprenticeships, for example, and other relevant pathways. Thinking about the uptake of STEM, so ensuring that current skills and employment gaps in terms of STEM are filled in the future by a diverse workforce. And highlighted through the points that I've made so far, that kind of partnership working between all stakeholders, locally, regionally and nationally, to make that happen. So you've just heard some of the key messages around diversity in STEM that the pilot project was exploring. Julie, if you could move on to the next slide again. And I suppose at this point, we just wanted to invite, or we'd love to hear a little bit more from you about your priorities and actions you'd like to see around this theme of diversity in STEM. You know, perhaps some of the messages we've outlined already resonate with you. And just like to hear a little bit more about what you're working on, other things we can do together. So we've created a Jamboard, which I think you can either get through scanning the QR code or Julie's going to pop the link into the chat pane. We understand that some people will be up for talking, some people won't. So that's why we created the Jamboards. And I suppose, yeah, we're just opening up that discussion just now. So feel free to use the Jamboard or post in the chat pane or Julie, I don't know if you're okay to share the Jamboard, and we can sort of pull out the things that are coming in, but definitely feel free to unmute and come in on this.
Thanks, Fiona. I can see that there's probably about 10, 12 people in the Jamboard already. So sometimes when we ask these questions, it takes us a wee minute just to kind of load it up and to get it on board. And again, folks, as Fiona said, we want it to be as kind of informal as it can be in the kind of online environment. So if you'd rather just come on mic and say maybe what you're thinking based on what Fiona and Ian have shared so far. Hi, Trish. I think you've just joined us. Nice to have you with us.
Hello, Maddie.
Hi, great to have you with us, Trish.
Is now
So
joining.
folks, feel free to just let us know what you're thinking, what's the top of your head in relation to what's been talked through already around STEM and priorities. And I can see that someone's adding something to the Jamboard just now. If you haven't used it before, Jamboard, on the left-hand side, there's like just below the select tool, so fourth tool down, there's a kind of little post-it note. I think, Julie, if you can hover over it, then folks can see, and it brings up a Jamboard. You can change the colour and kind of add your thoughts to that in terms of what are you thinking around diversity and STEM and that gender balance or other kind of qualities issues. So that's great to see. We can see a post-it note coming through already. Someone saying family learning, including ESOL families. So that's maybe one of the, and we'll just maybe pull these down. So we've got priorities on the left and potential actions on the right. So feel free just to add them through. And if you want to say your name or your setting in that too, feel free to do that too. And we'll just maybe invite you to come in and to share your thoughts around that. And again, it might be that this is maybe a new conversation too, that you haven't previously considered it, and that's okay to say that too. We welcome all contributions. So there's Katie saying she's a priority for her at the moment is the national numeracy these days, which of course we've just been having one of them just last week, I think. So that's great to hear. That's something that you're kind of already working on. And a priority is kind of staff confidence in STEM. Yeah, that's a real big thing for staff to feel confident, even just to give it a go before they kind of take it forward at all with their learners or the groups that they work with. So no worries, Mr. Naismith, if you're struggling to get into the Jamboard, do you want to come on mic and say what you're thinking round about your priorities or your current actions? Feel free to do so. We thought we'd give maybe a couple of 5 minutes for this discussion, and then contribution before we move on to kind of a next input about SAC. So it's amazing to see. Thank you so much for your contributions here. Just maybe pulling some through ones. There's someone saying challenging that prototypical image of people who take up STEM. So yeah, I often kind of quote back to my experience in school 30 plus years ago, more than I choose to remember. And I was one of the only females in a physics class. And for me, that was almost quite a kind of daunting experience to some extent, but stuck with it. So that's, I don't know what that says about me, but certainly it's something that, females can find too. Mr. Naismith, do you want to come in? I saw your hand pop up there.
Yeah, sorry, I had to log in on my phone because I'm on the school computer and it doesn't have a microphone on it, so I'm fighting with technology. But I was just going to say what I started typing in the chat, but as diversity in STEM is something that I've recognised through when I've been working in the school and working with children is something that's important, is to highlight not just the diversity of people, but also the diversity of careers that are in STEM, which sounds like kind of the aims of that study as well. But I operate a STEM YouTube channel called STEM with Mr. N, and as part of that, every month I release an interview with a different person working in a different STEM field. So I've had like a Haitian American who does educational drones, a Sri Lankan engineer, a couple of females, a female engineer and a female forensic anthropologist. And I'm lining up the next round of interviewees, which are again a lot of females, but different types of engineers, forensic toxicologists. Tomorrow it's a bioarchaeologist. So I was just coming in to say that, you know, promoting diversity in STEM is something that I'm really quite passionate about, but not just the diversity of gender, but then the diversity of backgrounds, roots into STEM, because there's people I've spoken to that went through uni and other people quit uni and got an apprenticeship and that's how they got in. And so the diversity of roots, and then just the diversity of careers as well. And I suppose another big thing going forward is with the kids that we're teaching in primary, the STEM careers that are there now might not be there when they come out. There might be whole new ones. They might be creating whole new ones. But hearing from people that have done that and been at the forefront, I think helps the young people realise as well that that's something they could be involved in going forward. And I think I've rambled enough.
No, I think thank you so much for being brave enough and coming on mic and sharing that. We do really appreciate that. And yeah, your passion certainly comes through. And if you want to kind of pop your link to your channel, and I'm sure others might appreciate seeing some of that diversity that you were talking through. So yeah, I think absolutely diversity in STEM, not only the careers but the job opportunities that are there, and thinking about that from the earliest years. I noticed we had somebody from ELC on the call too. So there's lots coming through here from kind of professional learning for staff, for confidence for staff, and recognising that kind of STEM is everywhere. It's not necessarily the highbrow stuff that can actually be quite challenging for us. And I think that's some of the messaging that Ian talked about at the start, is round about STEM is for everyone, and there's a place for it within all of our lives and in our futures too. So there's a few actions coming through there that are really kind of nice to see, about using kind of enthusing the family with STEM, or kind of national events, and using the profile that they have in order to spur people on with that. Knowing about who the partners are, as well as some of the programmes that are available, which are really kind of great to support practice within schools. And just a wee notice, which we're going to come on to shortly, which is a greater uptake in STEM subjects. And I think that's one of the things that Karen and also Marjorie from Schools in Falkirk are going to speak about in a wee minute more. So Julie, thank you so much everyone for your contributions. That was really, really much appreciated. You'll see the kind of next two sort of discussion points that we have. And the board will be made available to you beyond this evening if you wish to kind of revisit it or to note some of the actions. Thanks, Julie.